I suck at jiu-jitsu. How do I suck less at jiu-jitsu?
I guess to suck less.
Ladies and gentlemen, the diabolical leader of the headlock squad.
Hey everybody, this is Josh McKinney, and I just want to welcome you to the newest episode of the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show. Today, we're going to be looking at still one of the most requested topics on the show. I've covered this, in my mind many times, but when you're looking at 300 plus episodes, maybe it's really not that many times. But it's still something we've talked about to all kinds of different jiu-jitsu competitors. Really, at the start of this show, struggling with competition anxiety, if you made me list my top 10 struggles in jiu-jitsu, no doubt competition anxiety would have been number one. That's why early on in the show, so many of my questions to good athletes were about how do you deal with competition anxiety? And at this point, I really do feel like I have kind of gotten to become an expert on dealing with competition anxiety. Obviously, as a lot of you guys know, I have competed in jiu-jitsu for like 16 years. But on top of that, I have literally coached thousands of jiu-jitsu matches. And I've done privates with people all over the world, helping them manage their competition anxiety. And I think the most important thing for me is that I have been able to work through my own competition anxiety. And this is something that I have dealt with literally from white belt. The first match that I ever had was 3 months into a jiu-jitsu tournament. My heart was just totally racing, beating out of my chest, and I pretty much just froze in that first match. I really didn't do any jiu-jitsu because the experience was so intense, and I didn't know how to handle it. And ever since then, I have been trying to learn how to handle competition anxiety, how to deal with imposter syndrome. And really, when we talk about competition anxiety, a lot of people think maybe it's this thing that I will not experience one day. Maybe I will get rid of my competition anxiety. I don't think, at least from my experience, from the experience of really high-level competitors I've gotten to talk to, and even just students that I've had, I don't think you can get rid of your competition anxiety. I don't think you can get rid of performance anxiety. I don't think it's possible. I think you can learn how to deal with it better. And really, it's, can you look at this anxiety that you have, this imposter syndrome that you have, look at it right in the face and perform regardless of that. One of my friends that's been on the show twice, Jeff Scholes, he talked about, he would always say, and with this competition mindset. I remember I was a brown belt and into black belt when he was training with us, and so we got so much free advice from a sports psychologist about how to deal with this. And something he was really big on was separating competition anxiety from how you perform, and separating everything from how you perform. For example, my ankle hurts, but I can still perform. I have anxiety, but I can still perform, and I can still perform. And you separate that. Those are two different things. And we're going to dig into all of that today. And I just think the perfect place to start with this episode is we will start with kind of the idea of competition anxiety, what that even is, what imposter syndrome is, what competition anxiety looks like. If you are somebody who experiences this, I guarantee you are going to say in this first 5-10 minutes, oh yeah, I've been there. Okay, so the big thing to understand is, yes, you are battling an opponent in a jiu-jitsu tournament, but so many of us are battling ourselves before the jiu-jitsu tournament, in the lead up to the match, weeks out from the match. And we're going to even start this idea in looking at beating competition anxiety with how we train in the lead up to the tournament. But we'll get there in a second. Right now, we're just looking at what does it feel like to be paralyzed with fear for a jiu-jitsu tournament. in the lead up, it can feel like a bunch of different things. But as the match gets close, some of the main thoughts that pop through people's head first is like, you didn't work hard enough. You skipped Wednesday night training 3 weeks ago and you didn't work hard enough. You will now lose this match. It's so common to feel that way. And we'll talk about this later. Sometimes that idea of you didn't work hard enough actually will cause you to overtrain and cause you to perform at a lower level, okay? And we'll dig deeper into that idea. But I just, again, am giving you guys some pictures of what competition anxiety, how it can talk to you. Hey, this guy is better than you. He's got more stripes on his belt. Sometimes, you go to a competition, you do a no-gi division, you're a blue belt, and you're competing against a brown belt. Blue belts can't beat brown belts, right? And this is something that, again, is normal. When you're competing at black belt, it's the most bizarre thing. You go in the beginning of jiu-jitsu and you're doing these matches where it's like, okay, at least we're both blue belts. At least we're both purple belts. At least we're both brown belts. And yeah, there can be skill differences, but at least we're both the same belt. You get your black belt, and this is how it was for me. My first match as a black belt, I compete against a guy who had won weight and open class of worlds at black belt adult, when I was a white belt doing that first competition that I told you about. So he literally, as a black belt, had 12, 13 years of black belt experience after winning a world title over my, entire jiu-jitsu career. There was no way that I was going to be like, oh yeah, I am way more skilled than this guy, And so black belt is so common that it's like it retires a lot of people from jiu-jitsu competition because of that feeling. Because you're like, well, I'm 2 days at black belt and this guy is 20 years at black belt. And here's the thing though, skill doesn't always determine the outcome of a jiu-jitsu match. We always think it's going to be like, oh, the better guy wins. And I tell you guys this a lot. This is like my problem with just the mentality of jiu-jitsu competition nowadays is like professional competition. Like, oh, that guy beat that guy. So then that guy sucks because he lost, and he lost to this guy too. So he sucks too. And in truth, it's like you're taking 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and you're putting all of your jiu-jitsu in that 5 to 10 minutes and hoping that you can perform at your best. And sometimes you simply don't. Sometimes the guy that you're going against simply performs better. Maybe he has a smarter strategy. And it's not uncommon. You can ask any high-level competitor this. Have you ever lost to somebody who you know 100% that you were better than? And I guarantee you, and sometimes it's delusion. Sometimes we just always are like, oh yeah, I would have had that guy if I didn't, suck. But most of the time, so many people will tell you, like, yeah, it's not uncommon for me to lose to guys that I'm not as good as. And if people are really being honest with you too, if you compete a lot, there are going to be times that because of how things played out in the tournament, because of just the strategy that was used, because of whatever, something that you're not even aware of, but that you can actually beat people that are better than you in competition. I remember I was talking to a guy, Chris Howe, as a blue belt, and this is like the first time that idea ever made sense to me. We were talking about strategy and competition, and he said something along the lines of, he's like, I don't even think about if I'm better than a person or not. He's like, that's irrelevant. He goes, I have to be better than that person for 5 minutes. That's how I think about it. If I score 2 points, he's like, it's way easier to be better than that person for 5 minutes. That guy's going to really have to try so much harder to get back. And he's like, I don't even think about, is he better than me? Is he not? It's just about going out and competing. And the next thing that is common that people will think, another imposter syndrome thought is my training partners aren't as good as my opponents, or my coach isn't as good as my opponent's coach. And that is so common if you train at a lesser known gym. It's so common that people will go, oh yeah, but I have this Atos blue belt in my division. It's like, dude, that Atos blue belt one doesn't even train with like the headquarters of Atos. He's just an affiliate. So there's really no correlation there most of the time anyway. But even if there was, just because your coach is good doesn't mean that you're good at jiu-jitsu. It doesn't mean that like, okay, well, I train under Andre Goval, so now, and I'm a blue belt, so I am as good as Andre was as a blue belt. It doesn't work like that. We're like, all those other things are outside of jiu-jitsu. They are external. The thing that matters is the two people that walk onto the mat. Is it beneficial to have your coach in your corner? Yes. I just competed this weekend, and it was one of the first times in a bit, like at a tournament, that I have had my coach Kyle there coaching me. And it's crazy the difference that I feel when I have him there. And I can't name any one particular thing. I can't be like, oh yeah, it's just this thing that he does. A lot of it is the familiarity. I've trained with this guy for almost 17 years. And having that voice, that outside perspective that knows my game so well, but is getting to see things from the outside is just huge for me. But back, like, even on that competition, I don't feel like I didn't work hard enough, this guy is better than me, or my training partners aren't as good as my opponent, or my coach isn't as good as their coach. The imposter syndrome thought that I was having a lot in the lead up to this match, or this tournament that I just did. I just did Indianapolis Open last weekend. And the big imposter syndrome that I was getting was, you're too old for this, man. And it sounds so silly. I'm 31 years old, but I haven't done adult competition in almost 2 years. This is going to be my first adult black belt division. If you guys follow the podcast, me and my wife had a baby 2 years ago. And I've only really competed. I've done a few super fights that were against adult guys, but I've really only competed at Masters since then. And I would even say this, any other time that I've competed, the self-narration that you have that is like, I didn't train hard enough and everybody knows it, right? And that's kind of how you think about it. Or this guy's better than me. He's higher level than me and all my team knows it. They know I'm like a lamb to the slaughter, right? Most of the time, those are just your thoughts. Most of the time, it's like no one else is thinking that way. But what was funny for me for this tournament is I was playing in my head, and I'll talk in more detail about the tournament later too. But I was playing in my head a lot. That was like the imposter syndrome that I was getting. It's like, dude, you're too old for this. Riggs, you're too old for this stuff. And it was constant. It was like, yeah, maybe this has passed you by and you just don't realize it yet. Maybe you're not as fast as you were and you don't realize it. Maybe your thoughts that your jiu-jitsu is getting better is not true. Maybe you're on the decline. And that was playing in my head. And again, I'll, tell you guys, that's like, those are the thoughts that you push out of your head. Those are things that you just go, you know what? Whether that is true or not, it's irrelevant. I'm going to go and perform my best. But what was different about this time is after the tournament, multiple people, like a very good amount of people, came up to me and were like, Josh, I didn't think you could still do it at adult. I didn't think you could still compete with these guys. It's like, shoot, I thought that was just internal. Like, I didn't know anyone else was actually thinking this. But it was cool to still, spoiler alert, I had 3 matches. I won all 3. And it was cool to be able to perform at that level and just reveal to myself, like, yeah, you can still perform at this level. You can still, and really, it's probably the most dominant I've ever been in an adult black belt division. I've won other ones, but I've never felt that dominant in one. And it was just interesting that other people's, I'm going to give a negative shout out really quick to one of the Midwest jiu-jitsu guys everybody knows, Dorian Brownlee. So Dorian's a photographer. BJJ Edits, I believe, is his Instagram handle. Before my second match, I had just won my first match. My next guy that I'm going to compete against has a first round bye. Okay. Again, these are mental things that happen in competition, and this can literally be part of your imposter syndrome. That guy didn't have a match. He's rested. You're not. And really not thinking about those things is the best thing to do, right? Because it's out of your control. I can't control how the seeding was at this tournament. It's been 2 years since I've competed in this division. Of course, I don't have the highest seed. And so I am getting ready to go against the guy. I felt like he was tough. I had watched a few videos and seen a few things. And so I'm like, okay, I know he's going to be a tough competitor. Dorian walks up to me, and I will say, I don't think he realized that I was competing against this guy that was standing next to me, but he should have just looked at there was only 2 competitors right there. And obviously I was competing against this guy. And he's like, oh man, I don't remember what the guy's name is, but he's like, oh man, have you ever seen this guy compete? And he points to my opponent literally 2 minutes before I'm about to go on. And I was like, no. And he's like, oh, he's so athletic, dude. He is unbelievably good. So fast. He's naming this dude's stat sheet. And, there's kind of a pause, and I look over and I said, oh, cool. Lucky for him. I'm, none of those things, but I'm just going to use jiu-jitsu to nullify him. And, we both laughed, but I think he was like, oh gosh, was I just gassing up Josh's opponent to Josh right before he went out and competed against him? And I won the match still, but the imposter syndrome was coming externally this time, which was bizarre. But yeah, just joking with my boy Dorian. Definitely give him a follow on the gram. Does some of the best jiu-jitsu photography that there is in the Midwest right now. But we will kind of move on. We'll take a step back, okay? So we've kind of identified what imposter syndrome, what competition anxiety, some different ways that it can look. Now let's look at how we can start from however long our, quote unquote training camp is in jiu-jitsu. There's not really training camps. We just train as much as we can all the time. But how we can kind of look at our 6-week, 8-week, 12-week training camp and go off, how can we use this training camp to help us beat our performance anxiety? Okay, so the big thing that I'm looking at when it comes to like non-competition training, I don't have a competition coming up for months. It's not even a thought of like when I will compete next. Generally, your thought is to get generally better at jiu-jitsu. It is to go like, okay, well, I have, here are some weak points for me. I'm going to start working on these weak points. You purchase Master Any Position in 6 weeks by getting on the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu Show Pro, and you try to master a position over 6 weeks. You get to focus on just whatever. It doesn't have to be specific to competition, right? Like, for example, working bottom side control escapes for months in the lead up to a competition doesn't really make as much sense, because ideally we're not going to be in bottom side control, right? We need to either work on not being on our back at all or work on not getting our guard passed, because starting in bottom side control, even if you're like, oh man, my bottom side control escapes are awesome, if you get put there in the competition, most likely you're going to lose that match, right? And so as the tournament starts to be led up, or you start to lead up to the tournament, you start to go, what are the boxes that need checked ideally for me to win this tournament? For a lot of people, it's something like, we don't do a lot of stand-up in jiu-jitsu. And so a lot of people, it's like, okay, let's do some stand-up. Let's get more rounds, grip fighting on the feet. Even if I'm going to pull guard, you're still going to start your match from the feet. And so maybe that is kind of the big thing that you're looking at. The other thing that I always look at, and I tell you guys this all the time, this was a hack from Mark Vives that it, to me, changed the way that I looked at competition, and probably any one thing has helped me win more matches. And that is having a quote-unquote competition day or a performance day each week. So often you start to do a 12-week camp for a tournament, and you have this expectation that you are going to need to dominate every round for 12 weeks. Like, I need to just go and be beating everybody up. Basically, you're like, I should be practicing winning every single night. I would say that that's not, again, the case. You should be practicing specific things that will help you win. So, for instance, again, if you are losing to takedowns in the gym, you're getting taken down all the time. That's where you need to be focused. But you don't have to do hard live rounds from the feet every day to get better at stand-up. You can practice grip fighting. You can practice how when you win certain grips, it allows you to affect your opponent's balance more. You can practice how disconnected, how you can win those specific grips. You don't have to go hard and go live every single training session. And honestly, if you do, your chances of injury goes way up, which you get injured, it's going to be much harder to compete. And your chances of just not performing well, like not being able to, wouldn't say channel your performance, but like bet on your performance. Because here's the problem. Like if you felt really good training Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then your competition's on Saturday, and then you didn't feel good that day, well, it didn't really matter that you felt good on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right? These things are not, it's so easy to get into the mindset of competition and be like, I need to picture myself in the tournament for these rounds, and that's going to help me with my competition anxiety. But to me, it doesn't. It doesn't seem to correlate, because so often you go in to train with your same training partners, and so a lot of the anxiety that would come just isn't there, right? You know who you're training against. One, you know like whether or not you can beat that person because you've gotten to do tons and tons of rounds with that person. Instead, it makes more sense to focus more on how do I feel when I'm in the gym performing well? Like, what is going through my head when I'm in the gym performing well? And try to do that in the competition. Try to get your mindset closer to when you are performing well in the gym. But back to this idea of a performance day. So the idea is you can spend every other day throughout the week, or as you even get a little older, a little more beat up, maybe competition day or performance day is every 2 weeks and not even every week. But it works best to do this for an open mat. And you go, I am going to actually try to win today. It's not about positional sparring. It's not about skill development. It's not about getting better. It is about seeing if I can take all of the tools that I've been working on throughout this week, throughout the last few months, and utilize them when it's time to utilize them. That's the hard part about competition is it's like, it's 12 weeks of lead up, 8 weeks of lead up, however long. And then we start to get down to the last couple hours of lead up. Then we get down to the last couple minutes. And then it is go, and you have to perform at your best, and you have a 5-minute window to do it. You have to be so present. You have to be so in the moment to perform like that. And the best way to be present, to be in the moment, is to practice it, is to get reps doing it. Right? And so that's why I love this idea of performance day. And that's why it's made such a difference for me. And so I'll give you some kind of hacks on what a performance day can look like and some things that I do with it that are very, very helpful. So we will talk about eventually we'll talk about what the just do jiu-jitsu mindset looks like, the mindset that you're trying to get to in order to perform at a really high level. But before we're there, we'll just kind of reference it as the just do jiu-jitsu mindset. And so for me, I am always thinking like, this is this mental place that I can get to. And for me, I've gotten to it enough times that I really, really feel confident that I can get to that mental place. But I use 1 day a week, or again, 1 day every 2 weeks, to practice myself getting into that mental space. I can also, if I really like to, I can practice the warm-up that I like to do before a competition. You can practice any part of this because you try to treat this day like competition day. Then you'll look at, let's say for a competition, you may have 5 matches. So I like it better to focus on doing 5 legitimately hard rounds. And not like, okay, well, I might have 5 matches in this tournament, so I'm going to do 25-minute rounds. Those are two completely separate things. In order to do 25-minute rounds, you have to control your pace in a way that is not like a competition. A lot of times in a competition, it feels like we're just going super hard, right? And that's why we get gassed having 2 or 3 rounds in a competition versus being like, like, dude, I can do 20 rounds at open mat. Well, the intensity of the round is not as much. And for instance, how hard you fight a sweep in the gym, and a lot of times you'll accept it, like, okay, well, I'll just play guard. Versus in competition, you'll be like, no, I have to do everything I can to stand back up. And you create these really strong athletic scrambles, and they make you tired. It's why competition is different. And so you're going to try to enter with that mindset in the gym. And you can even tell your training partners, like, hey, let's keep score of our rounds, right? As simple as that sounds, one of the biggest things that is helpful for competition is pretending, is saying like, hey, let's pretend we're at a jiu-jitsu tournament. Let's pretend we talk about the 1 minute spars and the kind of the 1 minute drills before, where we say like, okay, you start in side control on top, bottom guy is down 1 point and he has a minute or he has 2 minutes, and you create these scenarios. And what it does is it gives them avenues. It makes them go, okay, well, if I needed to score, if I was in this situation, how would I score? And then in the tournament, if it happens, they've at least been in that situation before, and they know how to get back to guard. They know how to get their sweep, and they know how to ideally win that match. And so just by adding the thought of points, it makes things totally different. Just by adding the thought of today is my day to perform, it will give you anxiety, which ideally we usually wouldn't want, but we're trying to learn to deal with anxiety. We're trying to learn to look it in the face and still perform regardless. And so putting yourself in situations for this performance day that kind of make you anxious, they're huge. For me, it's hard for me to get anxious showing up at Head Nod HQ and in trying to have a performance day there. And as silly as that sounds, it's like, my guys are so tough, but it just doesn't scare me because I own the gym. It doesn't scare me because I've trained here so many times. Getting outside of the gym, even if I felt like the training partners weren't as tough or weren't as intense, there's just more unknown going to a different group's open mat. Even if I'm like, man, I'm going from training with my black belts at my gym to training with blue belts at a different gym. It is the mental reps of going, I have no idea what this person's going to try. Can I put myself in the right mindset to simply respond, to be in the moment, to simply just do jiu-jitsu? And so I think that it's, again, the idea is you're trying to look at how you can handle pressure and how we can use this idea of today I'm trying to win to actually get better at dealing with competition anxiety, actually get better at going out and performing in that moment. And again, to me, this is so valuable to do this in your training. If you have 3 days of training a week that you get to dedicate and you're trying to be a competitor, I do think it's valuable to go, okay, 2 days are about volume and about reps, right? I am working on the positions that I need to be working on, and I'm making sure I'm getting a bunch of reps from those. I can win, I can lose, it's irrelevant. Then on that third day, though, you go, I am trying to perform today. Today, it's not about working my new guard that I've been playing. It is doing the simplest thing possible to get my sweep, whether that is that new guard that I've been playing or it's a guard that I've played for 20 years. You just make sure that you are going, today I am trying to win. And then the last thing that we'll look at when it comes to preparation for the tournament, and it's not competition day. Everything else we're going to look at after this is going to be like competition day stuff. But it is rest. Understanding the correlation between rest and performance is huge. Overtraining and performance. There's this this thing is like very normal for people where they will say, and of course I think we've all done this, like you'll be like, I felt terrible tonight. I sucked tonight. And they have this rule of thirds for Olympic athletes. I don't know where I first heard this, but the rule of thirds for Olympic athletes is basically this. If you are somebody who is trying to train at a really high level for something, you are ideally the ideal split of how training should feel is you should have 1/3 of the time where you feel unbelievable. You feel like you are performing in peak performance. 1/3 of the time where you feel like you're very moderate. You're like, I was kind of there, I kind of wasn't, right? And then 1/3 of the time where you feel like absolute garbage. And if you are actually hitting those three, if you have that split, it is considered that your training is very good in whatever sport that you're doing. Because if we could just always perform at our best every single day, well, it wouldn't. I don't think it's possible. If you look in any sport, they don't just play live games to like if you look at football, they don't just go, okay, so today what we're gonna do is we're just gonna put offense against defense, and we're just gonna go live. And then we're going to do that again tomorrow, and then again the next day, and then we'll go play our game on Sunday. So much more of it is about developing specific skills, right? And the reason is because just playing the game doesn't always translate to like, oh, well, I won against my training partners today. That means that I'm going to win in my competition this weekend. So often, too, not resting and overtraining yourself, it actually comes from competition anxiety. It comes from that thing that we talked about where we said you didn't work hard enough. And it's so common, like, oh, you could have worked a little bit harder. You could have worked a little bit harder. And again, there's a balance to this. You don't want to be lazy, of course. You do want to train hard. You want to push yourself in the lead up to competition, but you also want to be rested. And I don't know why there is this disconnect in jiu-jitsu from that idea. So many people in jiu-jitsu will be like, you'll hear, and maybe it's just a steroid thing, but you will hear people literally say that overtraining doesn't exist. And that isn't true. It absolutely does exist. You do not hear about people doing marathons and saying like, okay, my marathon is Saturday, and so I'm going to, do a marathon on Friday. And then I'll do my marathon on Saturday. Because if I can complete it on Friday, that means I would complete it on Saturday because I just proved that I can complete a marathon. No, Saturday is your day to perform. And so, I mean, if you ask people, no one is even going to be running or doing anything strenuous at all for those 2 to 3 days before their marathon run. You will even hear of people tapering off their runs 2 weeks out. This is how I look at jiu-jitsu competition. Is I will, in the last 2 weeks of training, I actually will only train hard if I feel like I'm going to be on that 1/3 of the time where I feel like I'm going to perform well. I only train hard and that's how I always say it, is like, I will only train hard in these last 2 weeks if I feel 100%. I will, of course, be doing my other stuff that I need to. I'll be stretching. I will be doing my lifts still. I won't get away from those things 2 weeks out. But the things that I will pay much more attention to is how hard I'm going and training and how often I'm doing it, right? It's not just intensity, it's volume. And there is a correlation between those two things. So when you are getting overtrained, it is because your intensity and volume are out of whack. You are doing too much too often, going too hard too often. And so here is there's probably other ways to say it, and there's probably more scientific ways to think of this. But to me, the big thing that I see with people and have experienced for myself so many times is you feel like you start to do your warm up and you're like, man, I feel like I have jelly legs, or you go into your match and you're like, I feel like I'm in quicksand. I just feel like I can't make the moves that I normally do. Sometimes that is an anxiety thing, but most of the time, that is an overtraining thing. You trained too much, too hard in the lead up to the competition, and you didn't taper. And again, it's so normal. It's so normal to be like, well, I normally train on Fridays, and so I'm still just going to train this Friday. when you could just take off. I've never seen somebody learn something the night before a tournament and then that be the differentiator on whether or not they win or lose. Most of the time, you see the guy that trains the night before the tournament and he is doing it because he's trying to basically burn off the anxiety that he has. And he goes and does that. He may even burn off that anxiety and not feel as anxious on Saturday, but he will not perform to the level that he could if he was well rested. Okay, so that is when we're looking at that third point on preparation as the weeks turn into days. That big thing is not overexerting yourself. And I mean, there are other ways that you see people do this. You see people go do a tournament in, you're going to do Master Worlds in Vegas, and you will see people the day before their tournament walk like 15 miles because they're like wanting to see the city. But that's going to wear your legs out. You should rest. You should chill out. I'm not saying don't walk at all. Don't sit in a wheelchair, but don't do anything excessive. Don't do anything out of the ordinary. Try to keep everything focused on that tomorrow or in a couple days you are going to be performing. And that is where we will pause and take our first commercial break. We'll come back in a second. We're going to look at the 4 physical preparation tools to control anxiety. This episode is brought to you by Datsu Sara. I've been telling you guys about this new bag that I got from Datsu Sara recently. The bag is made of a hemp blend. It is antimicrobial. It does not stink at all, which is a beautiful thing. And it has so many relevant pockets, so many relevant little spaces for all of my jiu-jitsu gear. But I got to bring it on my first competition journey with this new bag. And I won't say that it is the sole reason that I got a gold medal at the competition, but I don't know, it could be. But the big thing is that I was able to pack 2 gis and a couple of days worth of clothes, all of my toiletry bag, all of my other stuff, literally easily in this bag, and there was still room left over. I could have probably lived in Indianapolis for like a week with the stuff that I had. And to be able to do that with any bag is super, super important, especially when you're somebody that is a jiu-jitsu enthusiast. When you're going to go on jiu-jitsu trips where you need to have a gi in your bag, or you're just going in and out to the gym every single day and you need to have enough stuff, you need to have your toiletries, you need to have every single thing in your jiu-jitsu bag, and you ideally want a bag that is durable and is never going to break, is never going to wear out. This has been my whole experience with Datsu Sara. They also have antimicrobial hemp blended gis. They have so many things that you can just tell their dedication, not just to the jiu-jitsu enthusiast, but to the environment and to longevity of their products. This is like the biggest thing for me was when I buy something, I love the uniqueness of, man, I've had this for 2 years, I've had it for 5 years, I've had it for 10 years, and I still get to use this. And that with most companies, especially with jiu-jitsu gear nowadays, it is as though everything's goal is to be ultra cheap, and then you use it for 6 months and then it's useless. And that is the total opposite of what the guys at Datsu Sara are doing. And because the Datsu Sara gear team they are fans of the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show, they are giving I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show listeners 10% off anything on the site, dsgear.com. All you have to use is promo code ISUCK at checkout. You get 10% off anything in the store. And all the stories that I've heard since we've started advertising with Datsu Sara have been like incredible customer service stories or incredible durability stories for the products that people have bought. And I would love to hear your guys' stories. Be sure to go to dsgear.com, check out the full catalog, check out everything they have, use promo code ISUCK at checkout, and let me know what you purchase and let me know how much you love it. I really, we don't advertise many things on the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show. I really feel confidently that you guys will love this gear. Let's get back to the episode. And we are back. So now we're going to look at, like I said, 4 tools to deal with competition anxiety. And these are all tools that you can practice in the lead up to your competition. but these will all be 4 tools that you can use on competition day in the morning, like in your pre-competition. I don't even know, like as in the lead up to competition. So the first tool that we'll talk about, and I have hammered this for years. Again, this is something I learned on the podcast. You guys were with me in the interview when I learned this, started implementing it with my students, and no one, to me, this is the pill that I can give you that will help most people deal with their competition anxiety and at least make it manageable. And you can practice this and get better at it, okay? And that is breath work. So still, there are people that don't understand how much science there is starting to be behind breath work. People still think that breath work is this yogi meditation practice, this hippie thing. It is not. This is a physical button that can be pushed, that you can practice, and you can get your body and your mind to do things that normally your body and your mind couldn't do, okay? I always, this is off of breath work, and this is a random thought, but I always, it's no secret, I'm a Christian, and I always pray before I compete. And my prayer is always the same. I stole it from Big Trouble in Little China. And there's a point in the movie Big Trouble in Little China where they are about to fight the main bad guy. They're about to fight Lo Pan. And the guy who plays Grandpa from the Three Ninjas movies, great movies. Obviously, Big Trouble in Little China, great movie too. But the guy who plays Grandpa says, it's time for the medicine. And he pulls out this gourd that is filled with some special drink. And Jack Burton, Kurt Russell in the movie, says, all right, what's this medicine do? And the first joke is he's like, oh, it gives you a good buzz. And then he pours a shot and he picks it up and he says, see things that no other man can see, do things that no other man can do. When I am looking to compete, and this is always my prayer before competition, is God allow me to see things that no other man can see and do things that no other man can do. And it is kind of a mantra for me to kind of help me try to perform at my best. That's what I'm thinking about, is like, let me see the things that I can, that are in my control, that I can affect, and then let me be able to act upon those things. Let me be able to do those things. And the other thing that I look at is like nothing makes me feel more like I drank that special drink than breath work. And again, I think you should practice this in the lead up. I don't think that it's smart to try to do the breath work thing without, like, on your first day, like you're going to compete and then be like, okay, I'm going to do breath work for the first time today. I think you should, again, that's why I like performance days. I really think it's smart to get reps doing this and what you're trying to do with it. And I'll tell you the physical thing that you're going to actually do, but the mental side of it too is huge. You are trying to command a specific mindset. You are trying to command a specific mental state. In my mental state, my mindset may not be the same as your mindset because we are two different people. Some people perform best when they feel angry, when they feel like mad, like I'm going to murder this person. I'm not one of those people. I don't feel as good like that, right? For me, I feel best when I am, again, I told you guys, when I have the mindset of I am just going to grapple. I am just going to do jiu-jitsu. I have great jiu-jitsu and I am going to implement it. And nothing is, again, easier to help you get to that mindset than breath work. And how I look at this, and I've told you guys this kind of specific breath work pattern before, but this works so well for me. And if you were to go on YouTube and you search Wim Hof breathing, it will be the first video that pops up. It's about I think it's 15 minutes. It might be a little less. It might be like 12. But it is a guided Wim Hof breathwork session. He takes you through 3 sets of Wim Hof breathing. It's 30 breaths per set, followed by a breath hold, okay? How you're thinking of it is you are thinking of getting as much oxygen into your lungs as possible on each breath. So you're not doing slow. It's not that. It is a big, just like that, in and out on it. And you're going to do 30 in a row. You can, as you get better at it, you can find that there are certain paces that you like to go. But again, start with that YouTube video. It's so easy to utilize. You will feel super weird doing it. You will feel like, I always tell you guys, I like to do 2 sets of it sitting up and then my last set laying down. You will get, especially if you do the last set laying down, you will get face tingles. You may see colors with your eyes open or closed. You have some really weird experiences, but what's happening is you are like forcing yourself to hyperventilate. And there is something about that forced hyperventilation that connects you. It allows you to kind of disassociate from the situation that you're in. And that situation that we're in, we start to disassociate from, is a very anxiety-filled tournament. And you start to disassociate, and it allows you to go back to like, oh yeah, I'm just here to perform. I'm just going to walk on the mat. I'm just going to perform. And like I said, that mindset looks different for different people. But I think as you get better at it, and a lot of competitors will agree with this, and I will even give a few different times on the podcast. One time I interviewed Mike Crisp, and this is like, if you rewatch that interview, it's the most visually obvious thing that you've ever seen. Such a nice guy. Just a like unbelievably nice guy. Everything he says sounds so kind. He keeps calling the guys he's competing against, oh yeah, he was a sweetheart. Seems so kind. And then there's this point, I say, Mike, pretend that you are getting ready for, I don't even remember which match it was. And what does your mindset look? And you can actually see him change. He like sits forward. His facial expression totally changes. He literally changes into a different person. And it's almost like, boom, flip the switch. And that is where you're trying to be. It's, again, that different person that you change into is going to be dependent on who you are and how you best perform. Sometimes being angry causes me more anxiety. And that's why I don't like to have the mindset of like, oh, I'm going to kill this guy. It just doesn't fit me very well. Sometimes that mindset is like absolute gold for somebody. It's just like, yeah, this is the best way I perform. But regardless of what that is, using breath work to tie into whatever mindset, and we're going to actually talk about some specific mindsets in the next section of this, but we're not there yet. And so, like I said, 3 sets of Wim Hof breathing. How it is 30 of those breaths. 30. That was 3, right? So multiply that by 10. That's what you're doing. You finish with a breath hold. And again, the guided stuff is so much easier to use to start. As you get better at it, though, like this last tournament I just did, I did my breath work like I like to, and I didn't need to do the guided stuff. I've listened to, I had my playlist on and that I like. Tournament number 3 is my playlist on Spotify because, you know, tournament 1 and tournament 2 eventually just, they stopped hitting for me. And so we had to switch to tournament 3 and do those, finish my breath work. I did those honestly 3 hours out this time. I say always in my notes, like, oh yeah, do it 2 hours out. But I found that you could probably even get away with like 3 or 4 hours out, and it still is just as effective at putting you in that space. And a lot of times just kind of calming you down. That idea of disassociating from that stressful situation, you know, while the world is just burning, you're just at peace. And that is the ideal situation. You can do these in preparation 2, 3, 4 hours before you go into those performance day training sets or training days, right? Because then ideally you are commanding that mindset, and you're even experimenting with, how do I feel like I perform best? What thoughts come to my head that are helpful to me? What, and that's like where your mantras come from too. It's like, what mantra pops through my head? What thing do I keep telling myself that helps me perform? But the physical button to push, breath work. And that is, Wim Hof breathing for that specific situation. There's actually other types of breath work that work really well. If you guys like the idea of breath work, I could definitely do a whole full-fledged bro science of breath work episode. But I don't know if people actually, I know some people get a lot of help that have tried the breath work for competition anxiety, but I don't know if people would like to do that. If you do like that idea, give us a comment. Let me know in the comments that you would like to hear about the bro science of breath work. We can look at, there's a few different things you can do, but I think the other thing is you can use breath work to not get near as tired in rounds and to be able to push the pace in rounds later in matches. And you can tie the breath work into your jiu-jitsu using certain practices too. And there's a lot to it, but again, it's very bro science in my opinion. It's just something that has worked really well for me. So after breath work, next thing that is very important is having an effective warm-up routine. I prefer now to do warm-ups without a partner just because it's more consistent. I don't always have a partner, and maybe my partner doesn't always have a gi, and so I don't always have somebody to warm up with. But some people, and the other thing, these are two different points of the 4 physical preparation tools. One is having an effective warm-up routine. The other is having a warm-up partner, okay? So you can use one or the other or both of these. You can do your warm-up and then go and do whatever drills you like with your partner. And we'll kind of talk about what you're trying to get out of both of those. So when you're thinking about just a warm-up, don't overthink it. The words warm up is what you were trying to do. You were trying to have blood in your fingertips. You were trying to have a sweat going. You're trying to get your lungs open, okay? If you do breath work, you don't, at least for me, I don't seem to have to get my heart rate as crazy high anymore. I just more how I warmed up for Indianapolis. I probably jogged for 5 minutes. I did a few sets of burpees. Those always seem to really get my heart rate going, get my sweat going. I also did these while I had my gi on, and then a sweatshirt over it and sweatpants over it. So I'm it's more about being warm. It is more about sweating. It is more about letting your muscles be warm and ready to go and to ideally not tear. And so I think that was all I did for warm up. Then I sat for 5 minutes and kind of recovered from that. Went and walked over to go and try to weigh in, and I competed probably 30 minutes after that weigh-in. And so the big thought that I'm looking at when it comes to that competition, or when it comes to my warm up, is just making sure that I'm warm. Next thought is if you are going to use a warm up partner. This, again, if you can bank on having one, it's more effective than just jogging, in my opinion. It's just you can't always bank on having one. So it's just why I don't do it as much anymore. But the times, if I'm doing a super fight or something like that, you can almost always bank that you will have either a teammate on the card and you guys can warm up together, or you can even bank on hey, come to the show tonight, bring a gi, I need a warm-up partner. And what I'm more thinking of with that is you're trying to get into your jiu-jitsu mindset. You're trying to get into your, where you are at when you're feeling really good in the gym. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to start doing jiu-jitsu. Get a few reps of your best move. If you're a really big knee cut guy, if you drill 10, 15 knee cuts, with just moderate resistance, like 10, 20% resistance, you will start to gain confidence in them. And there will be a point where it's almost, again, it's like a switch gets flipped where you go, oh, wow, I feel good now. I feel like I'm ready to do jiu-jitsu. But it's like you almost have to, and even for me, someone who's done jiu-jitsu for so long, you still have to wake up on that Saturday morning and remind yourself that you know what jiu-jitsu is and that you can do jiu-jitsu. And such an easy way to remind yourself of that is to get some reps doing jiu-jitsu. Perfect example of this. This might have been Indianapolis a couple of years ago. But my coach Kyle competed in the gi, and he lost in the gi, and he just didn't perform like himself. He did lose to a very tough competitor, but he still didn't look like himself. And he was going to go against that guy again in no gi the next day. And I just, even he would agree. He's like, yeah, I just didn't feel myself. And it had been a very long time since he had competed. And so there could have been that correlation or whatever. But we were, I'm like, okay, I'm going to warm up with Kyle tomorrow. And maybe I wasn't competing, I was just coaching. But like, I'm going to warm up with him. Maybe that might be helpful. And so we drill from the feet, just do some reps on some hand fighting stuff. He's taking a few fake shots. He's getting deeper on the shots. And it was bizarre. We're doing this for like 3, 4, 5 minutes. And there was this point, Kyle, he's 100 years old. I don't know how old he is. But there was this point where he went fake shot and I kind of bit on it. And then he hit me with a collar tie. And it like really did, again, he was just going light on all these things, kind of off balance me. And then as I was trying to get tall again, he took a real shot and it was like lightning fast. And I was like, all right, you're ready. You're there. And he really was. It was like he just needed some reps doing jiu-jitsu. He just needed to remind, he was actually doing wrestling, but just needed to remind himself of his skill. And then he went out the next day and he had 2 matches, and one was against the guy that had beaten him. And he was dominant. He looked like himself again. And obviously you can say, oh, it's just gi or no gi or whatever. But he would even tell you that day, he's like, yeah, I just felt so much better the second day. One of the best ways to do that is to get reps actually doing jiu-jitsu. You have the right warm-up partner, especially somebody you roll with a lot, and their job is just to make you feel good. They're not trying to perform jiu-jitsu against you. You see guys just going, and if they have warm-up match places, you'll see 2 white belts just doing live rounds from the feet to start. Not as helpful. I think it's better it's more of that mental like, oh, you're dominating me. You're so good. That's kind of what you want your warm-up partner to do. And then the fourth tool that you can use is music is so helpful to regulate emotions, but you have to know that that's what you're trying to do. Again, you are trying to command a specific mindset. And for me, I always think is like, I'm trying to feel cool. I like music that makes me feel cool when it comes to, lead up for the tournament. Not really as much music that makes me feel angry or makes my heart rate go. Music that makes me feel like, for example, it's a ton of, I feel like I listen to a lot of 70s stuff before competition. That's one thing that's relatively consistent. But a lot of the older music that I listen to is music that's like cool guy, older music, it's kind of funk, things like that. James Brown and Curtis Mayfield and things like that. These are things that help me be ready to perform, to compete. But what's funny is I don't tend to listen to those things a ton outside of competition. My music selection is different outside of competition. But with my tournament playlist, it's more about how do these songs make me feel? What mindset do they put me in, right? And so for all 4 tools that we talked about breath work, talked about a good warm-up routine, talked about a good warm-up partner, or we talk about using music. All 4 of those, the main focus of those is to put you in the right mindset, is to put you in, to get that switch to flip, to let you take that pill that just makes you go, I'm ready to do jiu-jitsu. And that is what we'll talk about next. We're going to look at mindset and mental strategies for competition day. We're going to look at what mindset you should be trying to attain and will help you perform at the highest level. But before we do that, let's take a quick commercial break. This episode is brought to you by BJJ Mental Models Premium. Here's my question. Are you an imbecile? Look, I know you probably shouldn't talk to yourself that way, but if we're really being honest, am I an imbecile? I probably shouldn't talk to myself that way either. If we're really being honest, yeah, you and I are both on the same page. We're both imbeciles, but we still want to get good at jiu-jitsu. Is there a way to not be a very smart person and be able to look at jiu-jitsu at a very high level, at a very intelligent level? Well, there is a way, and it's actually completely free for I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show listeners. So right now, if you go to bjjmentalmodels.com/I-suck, and I'll make sure to link it in the description, you can get a free copy of Rob Bernanke's course, Jiu-Jitsu for Imbeciles, where he takes 7 different episodes to look at the most important conceptual pieces of jiu-jitsu and teach you them in the simplest way possible. And what this will do is it'll actually help you take the techniques that you already do and make them more effective. And then it will help you take the techniques that you wish that you could do, that you wish you could implement, you wish you could do better, and show you where and why they aren't working for you. So Jiu-Jitsu for Imbeciles is an unbelievably helpful course for any jiu-jitsu enthusiast. But what's really cool is right now for I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show listeners, it is completely free. Go to bjjmentalmodels.com/I-suck to get your free copy of Jiu-Jitsu for Imbeciles. And we are back. So now we're going to look at kind of the 3 mental states, or the 3 mentalities that I think are really helpful for jiu-jitsu. These are things I've used for my students and myself for years now. And I just think that they make competing so much easier. But what I also will say is you are going to have, as you get more reps, again, this is all practice. You can check every box that is on this list before your first competition, and it still may not work. But if you did, and then you go to focus on it again for your next competition, it will work a little bit better. And then if you do it for your third competition, it will work a little bit better. And if you win one of those competitions, a lot of times it makes the mental stuff work even better. You build more confidence off of you having performed before. And, that is what kind of it's funny. I never will say like, yes, every single person experiences competition anxiety. There's a small group of people that don't experience competition anxiety. In my opinion, and this is a generalization, but the people that don't experience competition anxiety tend to just be incredibly arrogant people. And so if that's not you, most likely you're going to just keep experiencing, you're going to have self-doubt. You're just going to keep experiencing competition anxiety. But there are people that are super arrogant that are like, oh no, I'm, even though I've been doing jiu-jitsu for 6 months, I'm the best in the world at this. And they are, maybe just delusional enough that they can believe that and still perform. But if you are not one of those people, then arrogance is not going to help you. You need confidence, right? And like the difference between arrogance and confidence is generally based on not based on fact. It's just like, yeah, I believe that I'm the best at this, so I'm the best at this. Confidence is I have been performing at a high level and I have been working really hard and I have been winning more and performing better, and I've been practicing my mental reps so much more. And that's the difference with confidence. Confidence is based on reality, right? And so there is still you do need a bit of blind optimism to be confident, just like things are going to go my way, and you need to kind of believe that. But we'll look at kind of 3 mental, and I would say that these are 3 mantras that I use that really, really help people compete, really help me compete. And so the first one is to stay present, okay? This is, being present is such it's a hokey word. People don't usually like grasp what it means. And I think part of that is because it's so hard to be present in any point in our lives right now. If you think about it, if there is even a moment of pause in your life, and I think we all do this, it's almost natural that all of a sudden your phone appears in your hand and you're scrolling through some app. You're scrolling through YouTube, Instagram, Reddit, whatever you're scrolling through. But it's almost as if we have decided that like being with our own thoughts is a bad thing, right? Just being in the present moment with our own thoughts is like, oh no, I can't allow this. I need Instagram's algorithm to think for me. And so understanding what it means to actually be present and be in the moment is very hard. You go into a hard jiu-jitsu competition match, you will be present. There's no way around it. You will be getting beat down or you will be beating the guy down, and you will be going, this is the only thing that matters. I'm not thinking about taxes. I'm not thinking about my girlfriend leaving me. I'm not thinking about anything else. I am thinking about doing jiu-jitsu. That is what being present is. And it's not as hard to be present in the match, but it's so hard to be present in the lead up to the match. And so often, weeks out from the tournament, you like are trying to force your mind to be there. You're like trying to force your mind to like, so I'm going to think this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to warm up this way. And then when you're in your warm up, you're thinking, I'm going to get my first grip. And then when you are stepping onto the mat, you're like, they're going to raise my hand. And all those thoughts are great, but none of those thoughts were present. Really being able to go, okay, I'm 2 weeks out. This is its own moment. I only get to experience 2 weeks out from this tournament one time. And whether that means I'm resting on this day or whether that means I'm training on this day, I am going to make the most of today's training because this is the only moment that exists. This is the only thing that matters. When you start to get to the day of the tournament and you start your warm-up, you stay in your warm-up. You don't try to put yourself onto the mat. When it's time to be on the mat, you will be present and you will go and compete on the mat. But in the lead up, you stay in the moment. You don't let your mind, and you will, again, these things are practice, meaning like your mind is going to jump somewhere else. And then you go, recenter, where am I at? Okay, I'm back at the tournament. I'm in the middle of my warm-up. And then your body will go like, oh, you're too tired to warm up. This warm-up, you have anxiety. You shouldn't warm up. And you feel the tingles in your body. And you stay present. You just go, this is part of it. You do that, and it's just this self-talk of like, no, be here, be in this moment. This is something that right before I left for my last tournament, my wife said, what was it? She said, I hope you enjoy every minute. Hope you enjoy every minute of this competition. And I kept playing that in my head as I was leading up to the tournament is like, there'd be times I would start to feel anxiety because I'm, again, I told you guys like you're too old, you're getting slow. And I would start to go there and I'd be like, wait a second. That could be, I don't know that isn't true, but I know that this isn't the moment to decide that. This isn't the minute to decide that. In my warm up, I'm doing my jog. And that was what my mindset kept going to was like, I am thankful for this minute, because like when we really look at it, jiu-jitsu competition is something really fun and it's something really cool and it's something really unique that we get to experience. And it feels so stressful at the time, but it is this whatever $50 to $150 experience that it really is not comparable to other things. I've told this story a few times on the podcast, but I just this is always one of my favorites. Is the first time I started using the phrase "just do jiu-jitsu" was my student Brian. He was a white belt, and it was Pans, and he had so much anxiety. And he was even telling me like, "Yeah, I just feel really anxious about this," and he was getting ready to warm up. Or he might have even already warmed up, but he was still just feeling anxious. And I'm like, yeah, right now though, we're in Orlando, Florida, getting ready to compete against guys. I said, I think the term I used was Gretchen from accounting could get a face tattoo at your job this weekend, and you would still have had the coolest experience over the weekend come Monday. Everyone would be like, dude, you went to a different state and fought people? That's crazy. And so often you get into this like, oh no, I need to win. Like, and that's what matters. What really matters is that you get to experience this, and that this is a unique experience for you. You're getting to test yourself. You're getting to push yourself. And at every level, it is the same. You could be like, oh, well, you're competing at adult black belt. That matters. It really doesn't. It's really irrelevant. It is just fun. It is just something that I should be thankful to get to do. And that's something I'm constantly reminding myself as I was in the lead up, the difference, the mantra I was using to respond to that idea of you're too old for this is like, yeah, maybe. But if I was, then this would be the last time I get to experience this. And I don't want to look back and go, I let winning get in the way of enjoying it. I let this care about like, I need to win this match or I need to win this tournament. I let that be the most relevant thing, because it's not. Really, the relevant thing is that I get to do this. I get to, in the movie Moneyball, when they're trying to recruit Billy Bean and they're doing like flashbacks of, of scouts talking to his parents, the guy says, there comes a time in every player's life where they get told that they are no longer able to play the game. And they're not able to play at the next level. And he said, and I think that, Billy is going to be able to play at the next level. He is able to play the game. And simply getting to, as much as we want to think that we're gladiators or something like that, we're getting to play a child's game. We're getting to wrestle around on the floor, and it can be a life-changing experience. It can be an amazing experience, but it's still something that it's a gift. It's something that could be gone tomorrow. Say you never know the last time you get to pick up your child. You never know the last time that you get to go out and compete and you get to go send it. And so just being thankful makes such a difference. But back to that original story of just do jujitsu. And that was like, Brian and I were talking about that, just being thankful for the experience. Just go have fun. Like, in my opinion, you've already won, dude. Like, you've gotten to experience, you've got here, you got to train hard for it. And he went out and had just he was doing moves that I'd never seen him do in the tournament. He really was performed at just this crazy level that day. And what was funny is he submitted his first guy and he comes off the mat and he's like, Josh, just do jujitsu. And I'm like, exactly. And then he submitted his next guy and he was like, hey, Josh, just do jujitsu. And it was just so fun to get to see someone that had dealt with like, oh man, I'm not good enough for this. I'm not ready for this. This is too big. And then to switch the mindset to thankfulness, like, I'm just thankful for this experience. Just do jujitsu, and it make that much of a difference. And so that's the last little bit, the last kind of mantra is you enjoy every second of this. This is the moment that you've worked for. And so often we feel great about the hard work, we feel great about the preparation, but then in the moment, we let the moment feel big. We let the moment feel like it's too important. And most of the time, just taking a step back and going, hey, I'm thankful for this moment. I'm thankful for this competition anxiety. Gretchen from accounting got that face tattoo because she doesn't get the feeling that you get from jiu-jitsu competition. The anxiety, that anxiety that you experience, as crazy as this sounds, is a gift. You pay for that anxiety. That's when we're paying for jiu-jitsu. You could just go to somebody's open mat and just go train with those guys, right? And get live reps against people you don't know. what is it about competition that makes it special? It's the fact that we're in front of the homies. It's the fact that we worked hard as a team to get here, and we're going to try to go perform at our best. And so switching the mindset to being thankful for the situation, even being thankful for the anxiety, being thankful for learning to deal with the imposter syndrome, being thankful for the reps of I get to beat down that voice in my head, and that voice, like, we all have it. When we talk about imposter syndrome, what's weird about it is it always comes, like, all those things, those negative thoughts that pop through your head, there's always a little bit of truth in them. That's why those are the thoughts that pop in your head, is there's always this little bit of like, yeah, shoot, Josh, maybe you are too old. Maybe you don't have that same pep in your step. When's the last time you ran a sprint at full speed? You're slow, dude. You might not be ready for this. And just going like, oh, it's you again. It's that voice again. Let's deal with them. Let's ignore them. Let's just push those thoughts out of our mind. So then the next thought is, anytime we're competing, we have strategies. We just have these thoughts of like, this is what we're going to do. But it's unknown. That's why we talk about being present. I've seen this so many times with guys where their coach will be like, okay, this guy's a really good close guard, so just don't get into close guard. I'm like, okay, yeah, coach, sounds good. And they get put into close guard, and then they're immediately mentally defeated. They don't go, well, now I'm going to try to beat the close guard, right? Because you have a strategy, and it's always great if like, okay, I'm going to take the guy down, pass his guard, get to mount, submit him. Always a great strategy. 10 out of 10 strategy. But what happens when you get swept, right? You take him down, you get swept, and now it's 2-2. So often you see one of those guys in that situation just deflate because they've gotten married to this idea of this is what is going to happen. Well, then you're no longer present because that isn't what happened. You are now in a situation, it's 2-2. What jiu-jitsu do you have to score points again, right? And that only comes from embracing the fact that things are going to be unknown. This is something really helpful from Eric Ebner that he talked about on the show, was like, he goes, I just think about my first 3 moves, not my first 3 techniques. He's like, I will think literally like grip, level change, shoot to the leg, grip, collar tie, shoot to the leg, right? He's like, that's all I think about. Anytime I'm trying to put myself in the mindset of competition and I need to think about the match, he goes, I just think about that. First grip, first angle, first move. That's it. And he goes, and then from there, I just start to grapple. Like, I don't have any other strategy besides that. Everything else is built off of that I'm going to just start grappling. I'm going to just do jiu-jitsu. Now we'll look at a few other tips on competition anxiety, and kind of the thing that makes, being present hard is jiu-jitsu competition. I'm sure that a lot of competitions with any other type of sport can be like this, but the hurry up and wait of a jiu-jitsu competition is crazy. I always feel like I connect well with musicians that perform live because it's a similar feeling. It's like this, okay, you just sit with your anxiety. Can we still play music? Are we still good at music? Are we gonna crush this? Are we gonna perform well? We don't know. And then they go out and all of a sudden you're present and you're performing. And then all of a sudden it's over. And it happens so fast. Right? Especially if you're present. It happens so fast. You don't even think about how much time is passing. You just go and do. You just go and perform. And so being able to manage the lead up, and I've told you guys this a lot. I say this especially for like, if you have a super fight at night, I really think that this is even more relevant. If you're competing in the morning, it's a little bit, it's almost hard to waste all your mental energy. But like, I've had a few super fights over the last couple of years where I literally am going on at midnight. Generally speaking, I've been asleep for like 3 or 4 hours by that time. So you're basically making me compete in the middle of the night for me. And it's so easy to wake up that day and be like, oh, well, I want to go do something. I want to go do this because you're anxious. And being able to just sit and be like, for me, no, I'm going to watch Seinfeld. I'm going to watch Seinfeld and then take a nap and then wake up again and then go to the venue. They always make you show up like 10 hours before you compete on a super fight, which is, if there's one thing we could change when it comes to super fights, it's like, dude, if I'm the main event, let me show up like when the event starts. This is going to make me sit here for days. This is ridiculous. But being able to sit there for days is part of being able to perform. And I have felt guys in some of these matches that should have been better, but you could just tell they didn't manage their anxiety, they didn't save their energy. I forget where we were at, but there was a MMA competition when I used to train at the Hit Squad, 15 years ago. And Robbie Lawler was one of the athletes, but also one of the coaches there. And there was a group of guys that were getting ready to fight, but they were like bouncing around, they were anxious. And Robbie, in only the way that Robbie could do, was like, hey guys, chill out, save your energy, boys. You're going to need it. And I remember being like, save your energy. You're going to need it. Is that real? Like, is he really serious about that? But being able to save your energy, being able to just sit in the anxiety is a lot of times the guy that does that better can be the one that wins the tournament. The one that can just say, I am anxious. This is part of it. And so, like I said, you can listen to music, you can watch TV, listen to a podcast, something that actually will take your mind off of the situation that you're in, something that will let you, because 5 hours out from the tournament, there's nothing to do. There's no warm up that you could be doing. So often you see guys running around and trying to coach their teammates when they go in 5 or 6 hours. And again, they're wasting their energy. It's so much better to just sit, save your energy, take a nap, watch a show. Sometimes in this, this is harder if you're a coach. But if you're not a coach, leave the venue. If you have 5 or 6 hours before you go, leave and go get coffee somewhere. Go eat a snack somewhere. Just don't be there. There's more anxiety there. And so those are just more managing that weight, because the weight is where your mind plays so many tricks on you. And so we'll take it to one more commercial break. When we come back, we're going to look at whether you win or lose, how you can better yourself after a competition. Let's get to that commercial. This episode is brought to you by Kicksite. So Kicksite is pretty much the best jiu-jitsu student management software that there is. And it really isn't even close. But what I think separates Kicksite from everyone else is how well they relate to actual gym owners, how well they relate to you and I, people that run a jiu-jitsu business. The example I'll give is like, for the last 8 years that I've been using Kicksite, one thing that has been crazy helpful is that if I've ever had a suggestion, that they not only heard me out, and if that was possible that they could just tweak it right then, they would just be able to help me change the product enough for me to be able to utilize whatever I was trying to utilize. But the big thing is if I ever found something that might help Kicksite work a little better, they would take their entire team, dedicate time to it, and what they would call uplift their product. Right now, they're doing an uplift of lead generation. So one thing with when it comes to running a successful jiu-jitsu school is it's very hard to get somebody to simply give you their name and contact information. And then from there, it's even harder to get that person to go from a lead to an actual student, to actually walk through the door and try out jiu-jitsu or try out whatever martial art you are trying to get them to do. And so Kicksite is in the middle. It's about 2 weeks away from this huge uplift on how they capture leads and then how they help you nurture leads. This is going to be a game changer when it comes to student management, and you can be a part of it with a 30-day free trial. You go to kicksite.com/Josh McKinney. I'll make sure to link it in the description. Be sure to use my code so I can get credit for it. But you go to kicksite.com/Josh McKinney. You get a 30-day free trial. You get to experience this new uplift for lead generation and just simply from top to bottom, the best student management software, the best video library software, the best overall when it comes to running a jiu-jitsu school. There is no way that I would have 3 jiu-jitsu schools now if it was not for Kicksite. And so be sure to give them a check out. Be sure to go to kicksite.com/Josh McKinney and sign up for your free 30-day trial. Let's get back to the episode. And now we are back. So you got done competing, you were in the moment, and you went and performed. The first thing, and this is my biggest rule for competition, and I will hammer my guys on this till the end, and I expect to be hammered on this the exact same way. And that is that excuses rob you of growth. You avoid any excuse. And it's so hard because it's in jiu-jitsu competition, when you're the same level as your opponent, it is going to be close, or it can be close. And a referee can make a call that affects the match. And it's so easy to be like, well, I only lost because the referee got those points wrong. And as soon as you do that, you lose the fact that you didn't get the takedown earlier in the match, or you got your guard passed when you shouldn't have gotten your guard passed. And you rob yourself of this opportunity to get better. And so it's just, I think that it's so common that the term I used in my notes is, if you blame the ref, you give away your power to improve. And so many people, they do this in every competition they do. You ask most people, they've never even lost a match. It was just only ever that the ref screwed them. It's like, yeah, but I was down 2-0, and that's why I got submitted, is because I was having to take risks that I shouldn't have had to take because the ref screwed me over. And I have been on the wrong side of a lot of bad calls. A lot of calls where people are coming up to me after and being like, oh, you got screwed, man. You got screwed. And that's great. I appreciate people coming up and saying that, but it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. It does not matter what the ref did. I can only control what I can control. And that the ref, again, I told you guys, I did a match. So Indianapolis, first match was the guy's first match. Second match was my next opponent's first match. Third match in the finals was my opponent's second match. So I had more matches than 2 of those guys that I'd had. That is something that's so easy to play in your head, so easy to focus on. And you're just like, who cares? I can't control it. Just go out and perform, right? And you don't, again, this is a version of not being in the moment, but you don't go into your first match and go, I need to save energy. I need to make sure that I'm saving energy because this next guy I have he has a first round bye. And you don't even let that's out of your control. Go and win your first match. Go and win the first grips of your first match. Then we deal with the next moment as it comes, because we're taking everything a minute at a time. We're not focused on the finals. It's irrelevant. I was supposed to have a really known competitor in the finals, and he didn't show for the tournament. And so it didn't matter. It's irrelevant. And so when we are looking at how we're going win or lose, there is just never any room for excuses. Next, no matter what, win or lose, we should come home with a new perspective. This is harder when you win, actually. It's harder to not just sit back and go, well, I did it. I am the king now. I finally won. It's so hard to not do that. It's so much better, though, to go, well, I won my division. I won my match. this is terrible. Maybe this is self-hate, but I woke up Saturday night after competing, and I woke up like 1:30 in the morning. My eyes open, and I was like, I can't believe I got tied up in 50-50 guard 2 different times. That was so stupid. I gotta deal with that. I gotta fix that. And then I like paused and like, okay, I need to go back to sleep. Actually, I need to chill out. But that mindset is a mindset that I've always used for competition. It's like, you win or you lose. What could you have done better? Because so often competition, it holds a magnifying glass over your jiu-jitsu, and you should let it. You should be happy. You don't always go with like, sometimes you just underperform. Sometimes anxiety gets in the way or whatever. And then you try to deal with that, right? You go, I need to focus on competition anxiety. But no matter what, you should, like, the quality of competition reps is so much better than any reps that you get in the gym. If you have 2 or 3 matches at a competition, and most people would agree with me, then you go train, you take a couple days off, then you go train, you will feel as though you got better. And I am of the opinion it's because you actually did get better. Those reps are more valuable. Not all reps are equal. The intensity of competition reps, when it's do or die, are so much more relevant. The things that you lose on if you get submitted in a competition, you get armbarred, you will have this new perspective of, I don't want to get armbarred ever again. And you will start to deal with armbars better, right? If you pass a certain guard that you've never really passed, you will probably be able to go into the gym the next day and pass that guard again. There's just something about the intensity of competition that it produces more relevant reps. And so kind of leaning into that, win or lose, and going like, I am going to come home with something to work on. I'm going to come home maybe with something that worked well, right? Sometimes you go, man, I hit a single leg, and I don't usually hit single legs in the gym. It just kind of like happened in that. So maybe you go, I should try to hit more single legs. I should focus more on that. I had success with it already. I should try to get better at that. Or sometimes you leave, and the only thing, maybe you were just that dominant in the tournament, or maybe you got beat up that bad in the tournament, but the only thing relevant is kind of a new goal. And you go like, well, what is what should I do better? Or maybe this competition was awesome. This was a great experience. Maybe I need to do a bigger competition, more international competition next, because I just felt dominant here, right? And so you come away with a new goal. But regardless, I think when you compete, no matter what, you should come home with some type of fresh perspective. I think I've told this before. I was watching it might have been Nick Saban's 30 for 30 or something. It was definitely a Nick Saban documentary, but he was talking about a certain year when he was coaching Alabama, and they beat LSU on like a tipped ball at the end of the game. And he says, I remember being so upset with, it was like a tipped ball interception or something very, could have went either way. He's like, I remember being so upset with my team because they were just so proud of themselves for winning that game. And he's like, they only cared about the result and they didn't care about the performance. And he said, and then 3 weeks later when we lost to, I think they lost like South Carolina that year. It's like 3 weeks later when we lost to South Carolina, and he's like, I knew that we had these holes in our game and I was trying to fix them, but I couldn't get the kids to understand because they were like, but we're undefeated. The result is that we won. And you see this so often in jiu-jitsu is like, everything's good until it's not, because people don't look through that magnifying glass and say, well, this is the problem that occurred. I got caught in 50-50 when I shouldn't. I dealt with 50-50 just fine. I play the position well, but it's not part of where I want to be. And so I go back on it and I go, well, I need to be better at, I look at the entry that I got put there. It's almost the same exact entry both times. That wasn't where I wanted to be, and I ended up somewhere I didn't want to be. That is a hole in my jiu-jitsu. That's what I need to be working on. That's my focus. This is this new perspective. And there's a few other even positions that I go, I need to address this. I need to be better at this. But that only comes with the right mindset of like, had I have lost those matches, I think I would have picked out the exact same things. I think I would have been like, yeah, this is what was wrong. I think I would have picked out the exact same situations and said, I shouldn't have let this happen. And then the last thing that we will do, holy smokes, this is a long episode. This is one of those that, if you guys haven't figured out, I said so much stuff in it, it's probably relevant to listen to a couple times. And then it's, of course, always relevant to give a 5-star review, give a like, a share, give a comment. Let me know if you guys want to do the breathwork episode. I would definitely love to put together one of those, but only if you guys actually would listen to it, only for people that actually care. But the last thing I will leave you with is you win or lose, you celebrate the experience. I told you guys, I always give a lot of football references with competition episodes because football is one game a week. When you look at playoffs in football, they're one game. There's not like, oh, we play 7 games. It's just like one and done. And that's very jiu-jitsu competition. And the intensity and the skill development, there's just a lot of similarities between the two. But watching the Johnny Manziel documentary on Netflix, the Johnny Football documentary, and it is criminal what they did to that poor dude. They built an entire, they built a new stadium on the back of Johnny Football's drug addiction. But on that note, something that he said that really stuck out to me in it was they were talking about how hard they partied. And he said in college, you know, and like this dude, if you don't know, this dude literally beat almost, it seemed single-handedly, some of the best teams in football. And, you know, did it just so in such a bizarre fashion, in such a in the moment, just go out and play football to the best of your ability. Just be a wild man and win games. And that was what he did. But his saying was that win or lose, we booze. And you definitely shouldn't have that mindset. It's probably not the healthiest thing. But the idea is you celebrate the experience, win or lose. It is irrelevant. You celebrate the experience. The reason you do that is because it keeps competition more fun for you. The easiest way to quit jiu-jitsu competition is just to have a bunch of bad experiences. And if you're only focused on result, it's very easy to have a lot of bad experiences. You know, you have a 16-person division. Can we guarantee that you're the best one in that division and you're going to perform the best that day? Probably not. There's a good chance that you could lose. And going, it doesn't matter. I'm going to, you know, for me, maybe this is a fatty way to look at it, but I'm going to eat deep dish pizza when I go to Chicago Open, regardless. That's what I do. I've done this every time. I've competed at Chicago Open probably 12 times. And every time, pretty much eat deep dish pizza after, right? Win or lose. That's just how you celebrate it. And that, to me, is part of what makes competing in Chicago Open so much fun for me. Is like, I have this, you know, yeah, I've won a lot of these, but I've also lost in embarrassing fashion at some of these. And regardless, though, you celebrate the experience. You celebrate the fact that you pushed yourself and you decided that you were going to go into this competition and try to win it. And I think that it's so, it's just so easy to get into the, you know, like you go to school, and I'm sure for a lot of people, their work is this way too, but you're treated very much like it is pass, fail. Like, oh, you either pass the test and you get to go on to your next grade, or you failed the test and you're an idiot and now you have to stay at the grade that you're at. And this is not how life is. Life is not that way. The people that do best in life are the people that feel fine failing and learning from that experience. And jiu-jitsu competition is a great example of this. Is you go in, win or lose, you celebrate it, right? Win or lose, you come home with a new perspective and you are going to have things to focus on, but you don't beat yourself up for losing. And sometimes you're gonna be like, I should have had that match. You know, you were in the perfect shape. You thought you were going to win. You really cared about winning. You know, I'm not going to lie to you guys. I've cried many tears post jiu-jitsu tournaments, but in all of those situations, post super fights, where you're, you know, selling out for the home crowd and then you lose in front of people, it's discouraging. It really can be heartbreaking, but you move on. You say, what could I do better? I can't fix that. I can't change that. That's just now part of my story. But what's the next chapter, right? And so I think that's where I'll leave you guys with. It gave you a lot of different pieces in this one. This is obviously a very long episode, but hopefully this is helpful for you. If you do get something out of this episode, I do request, please, that you give it a share with somebody on your team, somebody especially that has dealt with competition anxiety. It is so normal. So many of us deal with competition anxiety. If you're a coach, share this with some of your students that are suffering from competition anxiety. Again, this is literally, I built the notes off this episode on my, off of my Google Doc that is overcoming competition anxiety. And I have all of the things that have been helpful for me, and I just kind of formulated them to be an episode. But that is, of course, I could have dug deeper into probably any of those one topics, but that is everything I know about dealing with competition anxiety. And I hope that 6 months, a year from now, I'll have more for you guys and be able to do an updated episode on this. But for right now, this is the best stuff that I have to be able to overcome competition anxiety. And just, you know, as the title of this episode is, stop losing to competition anxiety. I'm cool with losing, but I hate losing where I feel like I didn't get to do jiu-jitsu because my mind got in the way. You know, I didn't get to perform my best jiu-jitsu. And I hope for you guys that this episode is helpful for you and helps you be able to do your best jiu-jitsu. But that's all I have for you guys. And I hope this episode helps you guys suck just a little bit less at jiu-jitsu. Have a great day, guys.